Welcome to our channel, where everyday stories are told with raw honesty, drama, and emotion. Here, each video is more than just entertainment. It's a journey through conflict, life lessons, and unexpected twists. If you love intense, emotional, and suspenseful stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our upcoming videos. And now, let's dive into today's story. I had just returned from running a few errands in town when I saw her, yes, that Karen, standing stiffly at the edge of my lawn, arms crossed like a patrolling officer. That trademark smug look on her face made it seem like she was born to catch people breaking rules. I hadn't even popped the trunk to grab my grocery bags when I heard her voice blare out like a siren. That vehicle is in violation of HOA regulations. Before I could even exhale, she was already striding toward me, finger pointed straight at the black car parked at the top of my driveway. A matte black sedan. No logo, no company markings. Just a normal, unassuming car. I furrowed my brow and let out a tired sigh. What is it this time, Karen? She tilted her chin upward, wielding authority like she was delivering a courtroom verdict. The regulations are very clear. Commercial vehicles are not allowed to park overnight. And that car, it's obviously used for business. If it's not moved within the hour, it'll be towed. I almost laughed. I thought she was joking. But of course not. Karen never jokes. She reached into her purse and pulled out a plastic-covered handbook, the HOA Holy Scripture, flipping directly to the section titled Prohibited Vehicles. Her eyes gleamed with power as she announced, "I've already notified the board. If the car isn't moved immediately, the tow truck will remove it. In fact, it's already on its way." I felt the blood rush to my temples. Karen had never crossed the line like this before. I looked her in the eye and said firmly, "You can't have someone's car towed just because you think it's commercial." But Karen just smiled, that sly grin of someone convinced they're winning. Her voice was cold, sharp as steel. "I don't think, I know, and the law is the law. There's no room for debate." Before I could get another word in, the deep growl of an engine echoed from the end of the street. A tow truck was turning onto my road. I turned my head slowly, the weight of the moment pressing down on me. Karen beamed, glowing with the satisfaction of a perfectly executed ambush. And me? I knew right then. This game had only just begun. The tow truck pulled up with a heavy thud in front of my house, casting an odd silence over the entire street corner. The driver stepped out, clipboard in hand, his eyes scanning between me and Karen. "Which car?" he asked, voice clipped and no nonsense, clearly used to situations like this. Karen pointed without hesitation. "That one." "The black sedan. Tow it, immediately. It's in violation." The driver turned to me, his brows furrowed. "Is this your car?" I shook my head, doing my best to stay calm. "It's my wife's." Karen let out a sharp, mocking laugh. "Well, your wife better hurry back. That car won't be here when she does." I gave a tight smile and stepped closer to Karen, leaning in so only the two of us could hear. "If I were you, I wouldn't touch that car." She raised an eyebrow, that smug grin still plastered on her face. "Oh, really? And why would I be afraid?" I tilted my head slightly, barely hiding the grin. "Because my wife is an undercover officer, and that's an unmarked police vehicle, issued by the state police department." The air froze. Karen's smile vanished like a switch had been flipped. For the first time in all the years of dealing with her, I saw something I never thought I would. Karen, speechless. Her mouth opened, then closed again, like a fish gasping for air on dry land. The tow truck driver spun around, eyes wide. "Wait, did you just say, that's a police vehicle?" I nodded, my eyes never leaving Karen. "That's right. Unmarked and government issued." Karen turned pale, her hands trembling as they clutched the HOA rulebook like it could somehow save her. No, that can't be. There's no undercover officer living here. That car, it shouldn't be here." I laughed. "Karen, you don't get to decide who lives here, and just so you know, my wife lived in this neighborhood long before you ever did." And right then, as if on cue from a perfectly scripted drama, a silver gray sedan turned into our driveway. My wife, Elena, stepped out, sunglasses on, calm as ever. But the moment her eyes scanned the tow truck, me and Karen, frozen like a wax statue, her face darkened. "What's going on here?" Elena asked as she approached me. Karen instantly shifted gears, her hands flailing. I didn't know it was your car. I was just following HOA protocol." Elena gave Karen a cold stare, then looked to me. I pointed directly at Karen and said, "She called the tow truck because she thought your car was a commercial vehicle." Elena's face tightened, her gaze sharp as a blade. Karen stammered, I didn't mean to. It was just a misunderstanding." The driver crossed his arms. "You just called me out to tow a legally parked police vehicle. So tell me, who's paying for the call?" Karen stood frozen. I folded my arms beside Elena, savoring every second of that moment. Karen, the same woman who once yelled at a neighbor for leaving their trash can 6 inches off center, now stood in the middle of a humiliation no rulebook could fix. That evening, just after the sunset disappeared behind the trees, I sat in the living room with a hot cup of tea, still relishing the image of Karen speechless in front of Elena. But that satisfaction didn't last long. The next morning, as I stepped out to get the mail, there it was. An envelope stamped with the HOA logo, addressed directly to me. I opened it. A formal notice of violation. Karen wasn't done. She was still fighting, this time with paperwork instead of a tow truck. And the violation? Still Elena's car. Yes, the same unmarked police vehicle she had nearly gotten arrested for trying to tow the day before. "She really doesn't know when to quit," Elena said dryly as she scanned the letter. "Maybe she enjoys being humiliated." But that was just the beginning. In the days that followed, the letters kept coming, a full-blown paper war. First, improper vehicle parking, then grass exceeding 0.5 inches. The next day, a warning for unauthorized porch decor, which was, in reality, a handmade autumn wreath Elena had hung herself. Karen was abusing her authority, launching petty attacks one by one, hoping to wear me down. But what she didn't know was that I was saving everything, every note, every letter, every scrap of paper, each one a piece of evidence in a case she was unknowingly building against herself. That night, as I stacked all the violation notices into a neat pile, Elena placed a hand on my shoulder and said, "Remember what the city warned Karen about? That if she pulled one more stunt like this, they'd launch a formal investigation." I nodded. In that moment, I knew. It was time to end this game. I backed up every violation notice, including a copy of the exemption letter from the city for Elena's vehicle. I attached the incident report from the tow truck fiasco, complete with the investigating officer's signature in the official write-up. Then I sent the entire file to the city legal department with a simple note attached. "Systematic abuse of HOA power. Urgent review requested." Within 24 hours, I received a reply. The subject line said it all. "Immediate investigation underway." I handed the phone to Elena. She read the message and gave a cold, satisfied smile, her eyes gleaming with resolve. Finally, Karen just dug her own grave. Karen thought her meaningless citations would push me to back down, but she never realized those very letters would become the charges used against her. And this was only the prelude to a downfall she'd never recover from. 2 days after I submitted the file to the city legal department, a black unmarked SUV quietly pulled up in front of Karen's house around noon. 3 officials stepped out, dressed in government-issued uniforms, carrying a thick stack of documents. No door knocking, no announcements. They headed straight for Karen's front door. From our porch chairs, Elena and I watched the scene unfold like a season finale we'd been waiting all year for. When Karen opened the door, she was wearing her signature pastel cardigan, still holding a cup of tea. But the usual smug expression was gone, replaced by confusion and a guarded look. The lead official flashed a badge. I couldn't hear what they said, but within seconds, Karen sank into a chair by her door, hand clutching her forehead like the ground had just opened beneath her. Word spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. By evening, an emergency meeting had been called at the community center, this time led by city officials. And this time, Karen wasn't holding the mic. She didn't step onto the stage, and most importantly, she wasn't the one setting the rules. A representative from the city legal department addressed the crowd. After reviewing evidence submitted by several residents, particularly a recent case file, we have determined that the HOA board led by Ms. Karen has committed multiple serious violations of both civil and administrative regulations. The room froze. No one breathed. And then he delivered the final blow. Effective immediately, the entire HOA board is suspended. Ms. Karen is removed from her position and is permanently barred from holding any leadership role in any residential organization within the state. The room erupted. Applause, cheers. Someone even popped a bottle of champagne right then and there. Celebration be damned. Elena turned to me, eyes glowing. We did it. But the most satisfying moment? Watching Karen quietly slip out of the meeting hall, alone. No defenders, no allies. The stack of documents that once represented her authority was now nothing more than evidence against her. She passed by Elena and me without even lifting her head. I crossed my arms and tilted my head. No more quoting rules to people, huh, Karen? She bit her lip but said nothing. Maybe, for the first time in her life, Karen finally understood what real defeat felt like. Later that same day, a new notice was posted on the community center bulletin board. All HOA operations are suspended pending a full restructure toward transparency and fairness. No need to read between the lines. Karen's iron reign had officially come to an end. We thought it was all over when Karen was removed from office, but in truth, that was just the opening act of a tragedy she had orchestrated herself. 3 days after that fateful meeting, the unmarked black SUV returned, this time with 2 financial investigators from the city. They weren't stopping by for a chat. And unlike before, this time they came with a search warrant. The entire neighborhood seemed to hold its breath as the 2 men walked into Karen's house, carrying document cases and laptops. By late afternoon, they emerged with a large sealed box, and we all knew what it was. Evidence of secrets Karen had buried for years. Elena sipped her tea and said quietly, "She wasn't just controlling, she was greedy." The next morning, the city released preliminary audit results. The entire neighborhood was stunned. Karen had embezzled tens of thousands of dollars from HOA funds through fake invoices for landscaping services, phantom maintenance companies, and unauthorized transfers to an account under the name KL Investments. Money meant for road repairs, park maintenance, and community events funneled straight into her own pocket. I looked over the list of falsified expenses the city published and smirked. Classic Karen. Even when stealing, she couldn't hide that massive ego. A week later, while I was watering the front garden, 2 uniformed officers stepped out of a patrol car and headed straight to Karen's front door. She answered, wearing her usual cardigan. But this time, there was no smug smile, no hint of authority. When they handed her the court summons, she stood frozen, hands trembling as she accepted it. "Ms. Karen Lively, you are under investigation for fraud, embezzlement, and abuse of authority." I stood just a few yards away, not even trying to hide the satisfied grin on my face. Elena stepped out and gently took my arm. Can you believe it? The whole HOA empire crumbled just because she tried to tow my car. Karen stepped back, stammering, I didn't think it would come to this. I just wanted to keep the neighborhood nice. You have the right to remain silent, one officer interrupted. The door slammed shut behind them. News spread faster than wildfire in a dry season. Neighbors poured into the streets, whispering, filming, shaking their heads. An empire that had ruled with fear and micromanagement was now nothing more than a pitiful scene being hauled away by justice. Karen, the same woman who fined Mrs. Henderson $100 for putting up Christmas lights too early, was now facing a stack of criminal charges herself. And this time, no violation notice, no vaguely worded bylaw, could save her. On the day Karen appeared in court, the sky hung heavy and gray, as if the universe itself was ready to close the chapter on one of the darkest periods our neighborhood had known. She walked in wearing an old business suit, still trying to maintain a polished exterior, but her eyes were hollow, the eyes of someone who had lost everything. The courtroom was silent as the judge delivered the sentence, 3 years in prison, along with a permanent ban from holding any leadership position in any homeowners association across the entire state. Karen lowered her head, and walked out under murmurs and whispers. No longer the woman who made the rules, but just another disgraced figure shackled by the very regulations she once used to control others. I stood in the back of the courtroom, arms folded, saying nothing. Elena gently took my hand. No words were needed. The feeling of justice was loud enough. A month later, the neighborhood looked completely transformed. The cold, soulless HOA warning signs had been taken down. People started hanging lights, putting rocking chairs on their porches, even setting up swings in their yards, things Karen had once banned for violating neighborhood aesthetics. Kids rode their bikes down the street, no longer shadowed by threats of noise violations. Mr. Miller strung his Christmas lights back around the roof, and Mrs. Henderson hosted a tea party right on the lawn, the same lawn she was fined for using improperly last year. At the first community gathering after the HOA was officially dissolved, I was invited to speak. No podium, no microphone, just neighbors seated in a circle on folding chairs. I kept it simple. We don't need someone with a whip to remind us how to be decent. All we need is respect for one another. Applause followed, not thunderous like in a courtroom, but warm, heartfelt, more meaningful than any resolution the HOA ever passed. That evening, Elena and I sat together on the wooden bench out front. The setting sun bathed the trees in brilliant amber light, dancing over the rim of her teacup. We didn't speak for a while, just watched the homes around us, each one now reflecting the individuality of the people inside, no longer forced into the same bland mold under Karen's rule. "It's peaceful," Elena whispered, resting her head on my shoulder. I nodded slowly, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time, a freedom unchained from fear, unburdened by absurd regulations. Karen was gone, the HOA was dissolved, and at last, the neighborhood we called home had truly become a place worth living in. The story of Karen isn't just a dramatic neighborhood feud. It's a mirror reflecting a reality many of us have faced, a world where small doses of power, placed in the wrong hands, can become tools of control, manipulation, and intimidation. Karen represents a certain kind of person, the one who hides behind rules not to protect the community, but to satisfy their own ego and hunger for dominance. And sadly, this type of person isn't rare. But what makes this story truly powerful is how justice was served, not through chaos or rebellion, but through patience, clarity, and the law. The protagonist didn't fight back with rage or insults, but with quiet determination, collecting evidence, documenting misconduct, and bringing the truth to light where it mattered. That's the first lesson. Justice doesn't come from impulsive emotion. It comes from persistence and wisdom in the face of injustice. The second lesson is the power of community. Alone, we may be overwhelmed by people like Karen. But when neighbors stand together, support each other, and speak as one, even the most powerful figure must step down. The unity shown in this story, from hushed conversations to thunderous applause when Karen was removed, is a clear reminder of what empathy and collective action can achieve. And finally, it's a reminder that any kind of power, no matter how small, must come with responsibility and kindness. When power is used to harm instead of to help, the truth will eventually rise, and it will hold people accountable. In real life, we can take these lessons with us. Stand firm in your values. Don't bow to injustice. But also, don't lose yourself to anger. Learn to speak up at the right time, in the right way. And when you see someone being treated unfairly, don't stay silent. Even the smallest voice of support can make a huge difference, because justice doesn't arrive on its own. It is built piece by piece by the courage of ordinary people, people like you, people like me, who choose to stand up for what's right. If you've ever lived in a neighborhood where power was abused, where people like Karen used rules to control and intimidate, then you know exactly what this community went through. But the beautiful truth is this: justice did prevail, and the unity of ordinary people overcame the tyranny of one. If this story resonated with you, hit the like button to show your support, share this video so others can learn the truth about the real-life Karens out there, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next story, where justice, humanity, and truth are always the final winners. Thank you for watching.